Book 3, Chapter 41. Leela and Saraswati, Inner King Vidrudatha's tent. He remembers his past life. Everything is within the temple of the mountain Brahman. Discrimination of error. Vasishta said, when the ladies entered the tent, it appeared like a bed of lotuses. Its white ceiling seemed as graceful as the vault of heaven, with two moons rising at once under it. A pure and cooling fragrance spread about it, as if blown by the breeze from mandara flowers, and lulled the prince to sleep. Everyone was lying in their camps. It made the place as pleasant as the celestial pleasure garden of Nandana, and healed all the pains and cares of the people there. It seemed like a spring garden filled with the fragrance of fresh blown lotuses in the morning. The cooling and moon-like radiance of the ladies roused the king from his sleep as if he had been sprinkled with the juice of ambrosia. He saw the forms of two apsaras sitting on two stools, appearing like two moons, risen on two peaks of Mount Meru. The king saw them with wonder, and after composing his mind, he rose up from his bed like God Vishnu rises from his bed of the serpent. Then, advancing respectfully to them, with long strings of flowers in his hands, he made offerings to them, to the ladies, with handfuls of flowers flung at their feet. Leaving his pillowed sofa in the midst of the hall, he sat with folded legs on the ground. Lowly bending his head, he addressed them, saying, "Be victorious, O moon-bright goddesses, who by your radiance drive away all the miseries and evils and pains and pangs of life, and who by your sun-like beams dispel all my inward and outward darkness." Saying so, he poured handfuls of flowers on their feet. As trees on the banks of a lake drop down their flowers on the lotuses growing in it. Then the goddess, desiring to reveal the ancestry of the king, inspired his minister, who was lying nearby, to relate it to Leela. Upon waking, the minister saw the nymphs manifested before him, and advancing humbly before them, threw handfuls of flowers upon their feet. The goddess said, "Let us know, O king, who you are, and when and of whom you are born." Hearing these words of the goddess, the minister spoke, saying, "It is by your favor, O gracious goddesses, that I am empowered to relate of my king's ancestry to your kind graces. There was a sovereign born of the imperial line of Ishvaku, named Mukundarata, who had subjugated the earth under his arms. He had a moon-faced son by name of Bharata, whose son Vishvarata was father to the renowned prince Rihadratha. His son Sindhurata was the father of Silarata, and his son Kamarata was father of Maharata. His son Vishudrata was father of Nabarata, who gave birth to this my lord of handsome appearance. He is renowned as Vidurata and is born with the great virtues of his sire, as the moon was produced of the milky ocean to shed his ambrosial beams over the people. He was begotten by his mother Sumitra, like the sun god Guha of Gaur. He was installed king of the realm in the 10th year of his age, owing to his father taking himself to asceticism. He has been ruling the realm with justice since that time. And your appearance here tonight indicates the blossoming of his good fortune. O goddesses, whose presence is hard to be had, even by the merit of long devotion and 100 austerities. You see here, present before you, the Lord of the earth, famed Vidurata. He is highly blessed today by your favor. After saying these words, the minister remained silent with the Lord of the earth. They were sitting on the ground with folded legs, clasped hands, and downcast looks, when the goddess of wisdom, by her inspiration, told the king to remember his former birth. So saying, she touched his head with her hand, and immediately the dark veil of illusion and oblivion was dispersed from over the lotus of his mind. It opened like a blossom by the touch of the genius of consciousness, and it became bright as the clear sky with the rays of his former memories. By his intelligence, he remembered his former kingdom, of which he had been the sole lord, and recollected all his past play with you. So here we have an example of someone receiving Shakti. And they're receiving Shaktipat from, it appears to be a celestial being. And Shaktipat cleared away, balanced the karmic traces that were causing the clouding in the mind. First, he was carried away by the thoughts of the events of his past life as one is carried away by the current of waves and reflected in himself that this world is a magic sea of illusion. He said, I have come to know this by the favor of the goddesses. But how is it that so many events have occurred to me in course of one day after my death? Here I have passed a lifetime full of 70 years, and remember having done many works and having seen my grandson. I recollect the bygone days of my boyhood and youth, and I remember well all the friends and relatives and all the clothes and attendants that I had before. The goddess replied, know, O king, that after the fit of unconsciousness attending your death was over, your soul continued to remain in the emptiness of the same space where you still reside. This royal pavilion, where you think yourself living, is situated in the empty space within the house of the Brahman in that hilly district. It is inside that house that you see the appearance of your other homes present before you. And it was in that Brahman's house that you devoted your life to my worship. It is the shrine within the same house and on the same spot that contains the whole world which you are now seeing all about you. This abode of yours is situated in the same place and within the clear firmament of your mind. It is a false notion of your mind which you have gained by your habitual mode of thinking, that you are born in your present state of the race of Ishmael. Mere imagination has made you suppose yourself to be named so-and-so, and that such and such persons were your ancestors, that you have been a boy of 10 years, that your father became an ascetic in the woods and left you governing the realm, that you have subjugated many countries under your dominion and are now reigning as the Lord paramount over them, and that you are ruling on earth with these ministers and officers of yours, observing sacrificial rites and justly ruling your subjects. You think that you have passed 70 years of your life, and that you are now beset by very formidable enemies, and that having waged a furious battle, you have returned to this tent of yours, where you are now seated, and intend to adore the goddesses who have become your guests here. You are thinking that these goddesses will bless you with your desired object, because one of them has given you the power of recollecting the events of your former births. That these goddesses have opened your understanding like the blossom of a lotus, and that you have the prospect of getting rid of all questions, and that you are now at peace and rest and enjoy the solace of your solitude. That your long-continued error of this world is now removed forever. You remember the many acts and pleasures of your past life in the body of King Padma before you were snatched away by the hand of death. You now perceive in your mind that your present life is only a shadow of the former, as it is the same wave that by its rise and fall carries one on. The constant current of the mind flows like a river and leads a man like a weed from one whirlpool to another. The course of life now runs alone as in dreaming, and then accompanied by the body as in waking state, both of which leave their traces in the mind at the hour of death. The sun of consciousness being hidden under the mist of ignorance, there arises a network of a false world which makes a moment appear like 100 years. Let's take a moment just to comment on what has been presented. This individual thought he had achieved moksha. He thought he was in peace and tranquility. He thought he was perceiving all of his past lives, only to be told he was imagining all of this. He was imagining his enlightenment. He was imagining his past life. So this presents the quandary of self-realization that's liable to occur. It is a false sense of enlightenment, and it happens to many seekers, where they literally achieve what we call the spiritual ego. After so many, many, many years of seeking enlightenment, striving for moksha, one day the ego decides, I have arrived, and proceeds to pretend to be enlightened. So this is tricky. And if this occurs to someone, it's dangerous because they stop their sadhana. They stop meditation. They stop balancing karmic choices. Because after all, I'm arrived. I'm enlightened. Finally, I've achieved the goal of human existence. Ta-da. And unfortunately, they have only achieved imaginary enlightenment. This is when, if this happens to you, you must remember moksha, enlightenment, Jivan Mukti, is not the experience of enlightenment. It's not the experience of knowing your past lives. It's not the experience of living in great peace and indescribable bliss and harmony. Then you realize, I am not the silent witness. And when you realize that, you know you've been tricked by your ego. The silent witness does not spend any of its attention on recalling the memories that are pure illusion in this individual that one used to identify with as this is who I am. I've done these things and I am a seeker of enlightenment. It doesn't spend any time at all on that nonsense. So when you find yourself enthralled in all this glory of enlightenment, then you must realize, ego got me again. When moksha is achieved, one lives in the now. And in the now, there's no time. In the now, there's no past. In the now, there's no former lifetime. It is only the present, the eternal now. And there is no doing. There is only witnessing, observing, being. It's a very great lesson being presented here for the advanced practitioner of sadhana, sincerely striving to achieve moksha. He warned that the ego can assume the form of moksha. And it does this for its own self-preservation. Because if you continue your sadhana, you continue balancing your karmic traces, what's going to happen? You're going to really achieve moksha. And that means no more ego. And this is the scariest, hardest, impossible task, is to stop identifying with your karmic traces as who you are. This is where you can refine your experience of being the silent witness. This is where you can very carefully analyze what is my truth. Am I truly living in the moment, being in the now, the eternal now, doing nothing, only the silent witness? Or am I remembering all these wonderful things that I have done in the past, or perhaps even horrible things that I have done in the past, and feeling more and more enlightened? Enlightenment is simplest form of awareness. This is the way Maharishi has always described it. Simplest form of awareness. And what is simplest form of awareness? It's not lots of experiences, lots of memories. This is simply being. Grounded, pure being. Continuing with 51. Our lives and deaths are mere phantoms of imagination. Just like we imagine houses and towers in aerial castles and icebergs. Here, Vasishta is helping us to identify if we are stuck in our spiritual ego in false imaginary enlightenment. And we can imagine anything, including that we're enlightened. And it's very possible that we can do that. We will have this imagination, because the ego doesn't want to let go. The ego is the Ravana in the Ramayana with 10 heads. And every time we think the mantra in the Ramayana, it's every time Ram shoots an arrow at one of the heads to balance the karmic traces that are causing the ego to emerge as a phantom in the mind. The head grows back. Very tricky thing to destroy. So we stop trying to destroy the ego. Big mistake, trying to destroy the ego. Ram figured this out too after a while. Don't keep chopping off the heads of the ego. Become the silent witness. And so what Ram did was he shot an arrow into the heart of Ravana, which is symbolic for transcending the ego, transcending all the karmic traces, becoming the silent witness. Verse 52. The world is an illusion, like the delusion of moving banks and trees to a passenger in a vessel on water, or a rapid vehicle on land, or like the trembling of a mountain or quaking of the earth, one affected by a convulsive disease. As one sees extraordinary things in his dream, such as the decapitation of his own head, so he views the illusions of the world that can hardly be true. In reality, you are neither born nor dead at any time or any place, but ever remain as pure consciousness in the tranquility of your soul. You seem to see all things about you, but you are seeing nothing real in them. Your all-seeing soul sees everything in itself. The soul shines by its own light, like a brilliant gem. Nothing that appears beside it, whether this earth or yourself or anything else, is a reality. These hills and cities, these people and things, and ourselves also, are all unreal and mere phantoms appearing in the hollow vault of the Brahman of the hilly district. The kingdom of Leela's husband was only a picture of this earth, and his palace, with all its grandeur, is contained within the sphere of the same hollow shrine. The world known is contained within the empty sphere of that shrine, and It is in one corner of this mundane house that all of us here are situated. The sphere of this vaulted shrine is as clear as empty nutted itself, which has no earth or house in it. It is without any forest, hill, sea, or river, and yet all beings are found to rove about in this empty and homeless abode. Here there are no kings, no royal retinue, and nothing else that kings have on earth. Buddha asked, if it is so, then tell me, goddess, how did I happen to have these dependents here? A man is rich in his own mind and spirit. Is it not so ordained by my divine mind and spirit? If not, then the world must appear as a mere dream, and all these men and things are only creatures of our dreams. Tell me, goddess, what things are spiritually true and false? How are we to distinguish the one from the other? Saraswati answered, know, Prince, that those who have known the only knowable one are assimilated in the nature of pure understanding, view nothing as real in the world except the empty consciousness within themselves. Now this is significant because this is Saraswati speaking. And who is Saraswati? She is the goddess of knowledge. She is the Shakti behind, the energy behind the reflection of Karma Jyoti in the mind of the creator Brahma. And she is the one who actually created the colossal dream and is now creating the colossal dream of our universe. All that she speaks here is an antidote to every faulty knowledge construct in our monomaya kosha mind that is the bedrock of all of our karmic traces. We have a tremendous shortcut here, listening to the pure divine karmic traces being expressed, balancing our karmic traces on the deepest level. Of course, we need to be right now established in the silent witness. So as we're reading, always check, come back to, become the silent witness as you're listening to these words. You will gain maximum benefit. Verse 66. The misconception of the serpent in a rope being removed, the fallacy of the rope is removed also. The unreality of the world being known, the air of its existence also ceases to exist. Knowing the falsity of water in a mirage, no one thirsts after it anymore. Knowing the falsehood of dreams, no one thinks himself dead as he had dreamt. The fear of dreaming death may overtake the dying, but it can never assail the living in his dream. He whose soul is enlightened with the clear light of his pure consciousness is never misled into believing his own existence or that of the others by the false application of the terms I, you, this, or the like. Speaking. As the sage was lecturing in this manner, the day departed to its evening service with the setting sun. The assembly broke with mutual greetings to perform their evening rituals, and it met again with the rising sun after dispersion of the gloom of the night. Well, here in verse 68, Saraswati is reminding us about what is enlightenment. One who's established as Jivan Mukti has no concept of these false terms of I, you, this, or that. All is one, pure consciousness, pure being. Awareness is totally simple, not contorted into memories or attachments or any sense of separateness.